So we'll go to the next session, which is managing fast formula. In fact, like it's fast formula overview. So normally, as a functional consultant, right? So you will be discussing with the client on the benefits requirement, and you will be configuring the application. But we normally have a technical team who will be working on formula, who will be working on data loads, who will be working on your reports and all. Right? So as a functional consultant, you don't have to write your own formula. You don't have to create formula. There will be the technical team will do it for you and they'll give it to you. Right? So you just need to give them the requirement. But what you need to understand as a functional consultant is what is a formula, what can be achieved using a formula, and what are the what can be achieved through the formula and what is possible using the formula. So that is what is critical for us. So you cannot just like go and commit to a customer saying that this is not available. I can write a formula and then do it. So that will not work. So what I'll be helping you now is to understand how do we know if something which is not available as part of configuration can be achieved using a formula or not. Okay. So that's what this next section is about. Right. So what is a formula first of all? Alright. So formula is nothing but a simple piece of code. So Oracle calls it in a simplified business language. So not sure whether it's really business language or this thing, but it's a simple piece of code, or it can be a complex piece of code. So what the formula does is when, or to put it simply, so we saw in different pages there were different formulas available, right? So we saw in user-defined profile page there was a formula you can associate. At eligibility profile you can associate a formula. Then at the age page where we're defining age, right? So you have age for the calculation, it's one formula was there. Then for determination date one formula was there. For rounding there was one more formula, right? So you associate a formula to a particular page, right? So when does the formula get invoked? So let's say I have written a calculation formula to calculate age, and then that I've attached it to the age derived factor, and then the age derived factor I've attached to an eligibility profile, and eligibility profile is attached to a plan or option level, right? So when you are processing the life event for a particular person, and for that particular person, the eligibility for that particular plan or option is being evaluated, right? And then the system sees that there is an eligibility formula which is attached to the eligibility profile. So the function which is evaluating eligibility will call this eligibility formula, right? So that becomes your calling program. So the function calls your formula and it says, hey, I need to know the eligibility for this particular person for this particular program, right? So that means that the application which is calling your formula is passing information to your formula, saying that this is the person number, this is the program, and I need the eligibility for this. So the formula takes this piece of input, right, and it will have a logic which is defined within the formula scope. Using that logic, it calculates the value using the input which is released. Actually, can you go on mute? I'm hearing my own voice on echo. Yeah, okay, thank you. So the formula will then calculate the value using the input it has received from the calling application, and then it will return the final result back to the application which is called, right? So when you're evaluating the eligibility for a person, the program calls the formula returns the value, and using that value, so what does the formula return for an eligibility formula? So it returns the value as yes or no, y or n. So the application which is calling receives the value as y or n, and then it decides, okay, if it is y, that means this person is eligible for this particular plan or option. So then it will set that plan or option as eligible. Yeah. So that is what exactly a formula does, right? So it is a piece of code which receives information from the calling program, accesses database information. So what is database information? You have something called DBI, database information items. So we'll see that. And then it returns the value to the calling program, right? And the calling program can then use this information to modify the process functionality. If it's an eligibility formula, it can use it to modify the eligibility of an employee. If it is an age formula, it can use that information to modify the age, how the age is calculated for that person, like that, right? And so how does the system know which formula type will be available on which page, right? So you cannot have like hundreds of formula appearing under eligibility, hundreds of formula appearing in age. So for that, we have something called formula type. So if you see the fourth point here, based on the formula type, the number of the data types, okay, so based on the formula type is what is available on a particular page. So let me go to the application now. So we have created, we have enabled the benefits offering in the morning, right? So under compensation, we enable benefits offering. So it's a part of your set of tasks. So I go to benefits here, and it shows only these two as required tasks. I don't know for what reason. So you enable it as all tasks. So now you have the rest of the things, right? So if you scroll down, you have your manage fast formulas here. Okay, so yeah. See, if you see, when I'm creating a formula, so it's going to ask me a couple of key information. First is your formula name. So let me say test formula. Okay. Then it's going to ask you the formula type. So the formula type is quite critical because that's what determines what are the database items which is available to this particular formula type, and what is the return values, whether it returns a single value, whether it returns multiple values, whether it just returns a yes or a no, what's the return variable. So all that is defined at the type, right? And at the page level, if and the let's say if you are creating age related formula, right? So I define the type as age calculation, right? So on the age page, age creation page, okay, so what I'll do is I will create an age calculation formula. Okay, so I'll save it. Submit. Okay, so I'm not entering anything in the formula. I'm just creating a formula and then I'm saving it, right? Now what I'll do, I'll create one more formula, and the last formula type I define it as age calculation, and this formula type I'll define it as age determination date. Okay, test. Okay, so I've just defined this as age determination date. Now I'll go and again just save this particular formula. Okay, so going back to my derived factors, now when I'm trying to create a derived factor, okay, there's no formula compiled. Just a second. Okay, so yeah, created two dummy formulas, and I have refreshed this page. So if you see here, now when I'm creating this age derived factor, right? So if you go to calculate formula, you only see test age formula here, right? Similarly, when it comes to determination rule, age determination rule, I put formula here. So I get only age determination formula here. So you see the age calculation formula will not be listed under your age determination formula. Similarly, your age determination formula is not listed under your age calculation formula. So in other words, if you need to know if something can be customized using a formula, all you need to know is just go to the configuration page and then see if there is a formula available for configuration. It's as simple as that. If a formula is available, that means there will be a related formula type which is available, and then that will be used to list here. Okay, so if you see here, now we've created an age determination date formula, right? So you are using it for the determination date for age here. So let me cancel it out. Now I go to compensation, and I'm creating a compensation factor, right? So if you see here, I am trying to put a determination formula here, but it doesn't show up, and nothing shows up here, right? So that is because it is very specific. So I have created an age determination formula, but for compensation, there is something else which is called a compensation determination formula, right? So you have compensation determination date. So if I created something of the type compensation determination date, then that will be available to me on the determination rule for the compensation. Is this clear? Right. So this is how you need to understand whether something can be customized or not. So there should be a formula option available on the page. So it can be like, so see here, it doesn't explicitly state as formula, but when you click on source, it says formula. So what formula appears here? So that is picked up from your formula type called compensation calculation. So this is the formula type that will be listed under your when you're defining your compensation there, right? Okay, so so this is one aspect of the formula. So the next thing is, what is this LDG about? Okay, so if you don't specify an LDG, which means your formula is created at the enterprise level. Okay, so that is fine for something like compensation, but for benefits, it is mandatory to create the formula at the LDG level. If you don't create a formula at the LDG level, so what happens is effectively is that whatever formula you create at an LDG level, the formula is only applicable in the context of that LDG. So in our case, we have GB LDG, which is Great Britain LDG, which is used for this UK company, which is used for this configuration, right? So for benefits, you always have to create the formula at an LDG level, because if you don't create the formula at an LDG level, so if you see, all rates are linked to your LEs or LDEs. So even if you're creating rates at LEs, ultimately they will be linked to at the LDG level. So effectively, when you are exporting and importing plans, if your formula is not defined at the LE level, it will not be migrated. Okay, so you have to create your formulas at the LDG level. Right. So now, let's say when you're creating a normal formula, so you just put a formula name, formula type is specified, description, LDG is mandatory, and effective start date is the earliest date. Type of editor is always defaulted to text because that's the only editor available for us. And when you click on continue, this is your text editor which opens up. Okay, so I need to type my formula here, and then whatever I type here is the actual rule which will be used for calculation. Okay, so going back, I need to know what I need to type in now. Right, so you see, this is how a formula works, like how we discussed. This is your calling package. So calling packages could be anything. It could be your eligibility rule, it could be your age calculation, it could be your compensation calculation. Any of that could be your calculation package, calling package. So calling package always sends some input values. The formula will receive your input values, and in order to access your database items, which is DBI, database information, So you need to default the DBI values first. So you'll have one section. This is your formula structure. So you will have a section where you receive the input values. You will have a section where you are defaulting your DBI values. Then you have a section where you're initializing your variables which you have used, right? So if you see in the simple formulas which I have written, I've just written a formula called L underscore age equal to 11. That was for the age formula. I'm just repeating it here. So return L underscore age. So which means L underscore age is my variable. I am initializing my variable with a value, because without a value you cannot use your variable in calculation. The formula will throw an error. So you need to first initialize your variable. So I'm initializing it to a value of 11, and then comes your calculation logic. So then you can write your logic here as if something is so and so, then your age is this, if not that. Finally, your return variables. So I am saying return L of age, right? So these are the sections which is there in the formula. Right. So steps to create a formula. So we navigated to benefits administration. From tax screen we selected manage formula, and then click on create a formula. Specify the following things: formula name, formula type, description. Your LDG is also there, right? And finally we enter the formula text. So we'll see what needs to be entered in detail a bit further. So we enter the formula text, and then I have to say submit. And once I submit it, I have to compile my formula. So the compiling status has to become a tick mark. So currently it's a X mark. So you compile the formula. If there is any error, so you will see the error message in the bottom. If there is no error, it will be compiled successfully, right? So once your formula is compiled, you will be able to use the formula for your calculation. Okay, so that's what this page says about. So what are some of the areas and benefits where you can use formula, right? So you can use it for date calculation, which is date determination we saw. We can use it for even your enrollment start date, end date, coverage start date, end date. How does it define? So let's say I have a criteria like my cutoff date is 10th, or the data, any person who is making an enrollment before the 10th of the month will have this coverage starting from this month, right? So if I've made enrollment by 10th July, before 10th July, then my coverage will start from 1st of July. If I've enrolled on 11th July, then it will start from 1st of August, because I have crossed my cutoff date. So that I can define a formula, and that will be a coverage start date formula. Similarly, your coverage end date formula, your waiting period, enrollment period, action item due date. So we had yesterday you saw that for an action item which was in 1st January, the due date was 31st January, right? Beneficiary designation. That's what we saw yesterday. So that we said that just 30 days from the date. Using configuration it was created, but you can also have a formula which determines what is your action item due date. Okay. Similarly, you can have formulas for calculating rate, calculating coverage amount, minimum maximum of your coverage amount, minimum maximum of your rate, upper limit, lower limit. So we saw coverage today where I've defined the upper limit as 300,000, right? So you can also have a formula which defines that upper limit. And certification requirements, when a certification is required, if it is required at all, and all that information, proration calculation, eligibility evaluation, and there is something else called person selection formula. Okay, so these are the different types of formulas which are used in benefits. So then I will write my condition here saying that, let's say I'll default my coverage value. So instead of age, it's going to be coverage now. So let's say if person type, so person type is a DBI, I need to find out what's the DBI. So if person type, let's assume that person type is a DBI. If person type equal to EMP, which is employee, okay. If it is EMP, then L coverage limit is 300,000, else L underscore coverage equal to 200,000. Okay, then I'm returning L coverage. So what does it mean is that all the system does is it checks the database item called person type, and then it sees whether a person is employee or not, and then if the person is an employee, and this is your calculation logic, L coverage is this much, if it's not this much, return the coverage. So coverage amount will be returned either as 300,000 or 200,000. Okay. So how do you know what's the database item name. So you have a quick search here. So anything which is related to person starts with per. Anything which is related to compensation starts with CMP. Anything which is related to benefits starts with ben. Okay. So what do you think person type I need to search? Should I search with something starting in per or CMP or ben?
PR, right?
Right. So person type is a person specific information. Benefit specific information is your coverage start date, end date, coverage amount, whether the person is eligible. So these are all benefits related. So person type is person related. So I'll select with per star and person underscore type. So your percentage is your wildcard. So I don't know what the exact DBI name, so I'm just taking a wild guess. Let's see what it returns. Okay, so these are the possible matches. Okay, so these are all database items which are matching with the criteria I am searching for.
Yeah.
Right. So when I say person type, so person type is always in the context of your assignment. Okay. So I can be hired as an employee. I can be hired as a contractor. So it's always in the context of your assignment or your work relationship. So if you see here, so you have this database item called, these per ASG system person type, per ASG user person type. Okay. System person type is what Oracle defines. User person type is the one which is extensible, which we add new values.
Okay.
Okay. So this is per underscore ASG, meaning person assignment system person type, person assignment user person type. Is it clear? Yeah. So let me scroll down a bit further. Okay. Yeah. So here you have per hist ASG user person type. Okay. So that means person history assignment user person type. So you have assignment. Okay. So what the difference is? This per ASG system person type. If you see the database type is text, right? So what it will do is if the database type is text. So when you're evaluating, so the information which is being passed to your formula is the person information, person number, and the assignment number, right? So because benefits relationship is linked to an assignment. So for that particular assignment, it will see what is a person type. So it will always give you the latest value of person type for that particular assignment as of the date what you're evaluating the benefits for. Okay, so that's a single value. But I need a calculation which I need to find out what was a particular historical value as of a particular date. So then I need to go to this per underscore hist underscore ASG thing. So person historical assignment person type. If you see, the data type is text value and number index array. So effectively what it is, this is an array value which will have the list of all the person types which the person was had during his assignment tenure in the organization. So it's going to maintain all that. So I need to traverse through the array to get that particular value. Okay, so simple thing is for our case now we need to use this per ASG system person type. Okay, so I select this person type and then say add to formula. And I just close this. So this person type is now added to my formula. I need to keep my pointer in the correct place. So what I do is if you see the formula section, right? So the structure first says you need input variables. So input variables is not applicable to all formulas. So normally like input variables are predefined unless like explicit cases. So you don't need input variables to be defined in all formula, but you need to default the DBI you are using. So I'm using a DBI called per ASG person type, which is of data type text. So I need to give a default value for this. So I say default for this particular DBI is a text value. What is the text value? I'm just saying random. So I can default it to any value I want to, right?
Right.
So this means before you access a DBI, you just default it to some random value, and it does not have to be random. You can even write your name. So you just any random value you need to default it to, and then you need to access that particular DBI in a variable. So I'm defining. So the next step you can see is your variable initialization. So I need to use a variable called per person type or L person type, which is my custom variable I'm using in the formula. What does the custom variable store? It stores your person type information, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what it does now is, if the person does not have any system, if does not have any assignment relationship. So let's say for a contact doesn't have a assignment system person type available, right? So in that case, the default value will be written. So if it's a contact and then I'm trying to fetch the assignment system person type, the value of random will be associated to L person type. But if it is a person who has a system person type of employee for his assignment, then system will return this value called EMP. Okay. So if the database value is available, then it will fetch the database value and return it to this person type. So now L person type is your will have the value of EMP. Okay, so coverage I'm defaulting it to 11. Just for the case of defaulting, I can even default it to 0. Right now I'm saying if L person type is EMP, then return coverage is 300,000, else return 200,000. So this is what the formula is about. So you've defaulted your DBI, then you initialize your variables, and then you use your variables to calculate and return the final return variable. Is this clear?
Yeah, Dean, it is. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So let's see one more example, just a simple case where you have to make deceased employees ineligible. Okay, so anyone who is deceased is no more eligible for benefits. That's what my criteria says. So how do you know whether a person is deceased or not? So we have a field like date of birth, we have date of death. Okay.
Yeah.
So I define an eligibility formula. So eligibility formula is of this particular type. Right. So eligibility formula is of the type participant and rate eligibility. Yeah. So participation and rate eligibility. So this is the formula type for eligibility. Okay. So I will access, I create an eligibility formula with type participation and rate eligibility. So I need to know whether a person has date of death or not. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm defaulting my DBI. My DBI is per date of death. That's the DBI which stores your date of death information. So I'm defaulting it to 1/1/1951. Okay. And so what's happening here is, so then I say eligible is the variable is my return variable. So for eligibility formula, the return variable needs to be eligible. So I'm saying by default, the eligible value has a value of Y.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So which means that's my variable initialization. So if this condition does not satisfy whatever I'm returning below, then it will directly return the eligible value, which is Y, which I've initialized it to. Okay. So I've initialized my return variable is eligible to Y. Now I'm initializing my date of death variable, which will capture the value from your DBI. Okay, so I'm saying L date of death equal to per date of death. So this is the value variable name L date of death. I'm defaulting it to date of death DBI. So then I'm also initializing another variable called default date, which I am defaulting it to 1/1/1951. Okay, so the default date variable will always have the value 1/1/1951.
Okay.
Right. So now ignore this next thing which says get context. So let's ignore that. Just come to the next statement which says if your date of death is not equal to default date and date of death equal to effective date. Right. So ignore the second part of it, which says default date of death is less than or equal to effective date. Just ignore that. So what its first part says, if date of death not equal to default date, meaning if the person has a date of death value populated for his record, right? So if the date of death is 1/1/2018, right? So then that value will get assigned to date of death variable. And then we are checking if date of death not equal to default date. So default date is always 1/1/1951. So 1/1/2018 is not equal to 1/1/1951. So then it satisfies the criteria. So your eligibility will become N. Meaning the person has a date of death available in the system, so he is no more eligible. So that's what I'm doing. So what happens if a person is not deceased? He will only have a date of birth. He will not have date of death. Date of death will be blank in the DBI, right?
Oh,
so when date of death is blank,
that column. Okay.
right? So date of death will be blank in the DBI database. So in that case, what it will return is whatever I've defaulted the DBI as 1/1/1951 will be returned to this variable. So when you are checking if 1/1/1951 is not equal to 1/1/1951, that will be false, right? So it will not set eligibility to N. So it will directly define your eligibility as Y. So what it does is, whoever is having a date of death will be, the eligibility will set to be N. Whoever is not having a date of death, whatever eligibility you have defined as Y, that will be set and it will be returned. So it is simple. So it's about how we write the logic. Okay?
Exactly.
Right. So there is another sample for formula, which is a complex formula. I will not explain in detail. What I'll do is let me zoom it a bit. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So this is again a participation and rate eligibility formula. So what this formula does is checks whether you have a qualified spouse or not. Spouse or a dependent domestic partner. Okay. So we can use it and you want to check whether your spouse or domestic partner is a smoker or not. So that's what it is. So if you see per contact relationship person ID, per contact relationship type, then you have contact effective start date, effective end date, then you have Ben, PHP, tobacco usage type. So these are all the DBIs I'm using. So one of my DBI is an array DBI. So if you see here, per contact relationship ID is an array DBI. So what I need to do is this particular DBI stores the information of all my contacts. So my spouse, my child, my father, mother, any contact I have in my system will be stored in this particular DBI. So if I need to access information of only my spouse, so what I need to do is I need to traverse this particular loop and traverse the loop as long as this particular condition is satisfied, which is contact relationship type is S, which is spouse, or DP, which is domestic partner, right? Then if it satisfies that particular criteria, then pick up that particular person ID, who is my contact person ID, and then fetch the tobacco status for that particular contact. So tobacco usage type is this. And then I'll use this particular information to then say whether the person is eligible or not, whether the tobacco is N, any non, then that is my eligibility. So this is a complex formula. So if you see, formula is like the possibilities which a formula gives you is quite huge. So whenever you are discussing your requirements with the customer, all you need to know is if on a particular page there is an option to use formula, and if you are having to define a formula using some certain criteria, so are the database information values available for that criteria? Okay.
Yes.
Right. So that is what your formula is about. It is. I don't want to complicate it any further. I just hope you understood what a formula is about and what we can do with a formula.
Yeah. I think it's good. Good with that.
Okay. Okay. Sure. So one more thing. What I wanted to tell you here is. Right. So you have something called benefits fast formula reference guide. Okay. So most of the common formulas used in benefits. So I gave you a couple of samples, right?
Yeah.
So if you have an Oracle support ID, you can access this document. This is the document ID. Okay. So you can. I've given the link also. So if you have the Oracle support identify with you, you'll be able to access this document. And this document, for almost, not all, but most of the commonly used formula types in benefits, they have samples listed for you. They have given that this is the scenario, this is my sample formula. So you can use it initially when you're new to creation of formulas. You can just use a sample and then try to modify it to create your own formula.
Yeah, alright.
Alright.